In this video, I'm going to talk about 6 tips about the Coverdell Educational Savings Account that you probably didn't know, but you should know because this is a very powerful savings vehicle for K through 12 and college planning. But before we get into it, if this is your first time at our channel or you haven't subscribed, click on the subscribe button at the bottom. My name is Travis Sickle, Certified Financial Planner, helping you reach your financial goals. So before we get into it, let me know in the description at the bottom which savings vehicle you're using for college planning or K through 12, or which one you're planning on using in the future. All right, let's go ahead and jump right into it. So tip number 1, the income limits. Know the income limits, but also know how to get around them. So the income limits for the Coverdell Education Savings Account is $110,000 if you're single and $220,000 if you're married filing jointly. So if you're above those thresholds, then you can't use the Coverdell Education Savings Account directly. But there are some loopholes to get around this. You can use somebody else to make those contributions into the Coverdell ESA, such as your grandparents. So grandparents of the beneficiary can also make the contributions. A friend, a relative, anybody else who meets those income requirements can contribute into a Coverdell ESA, with the beneficiary being your child. So that's one way to get around it. Another way is using either a trust or an organization. Now, you might not want to go set up a trust just to make the contribution into the Coverdell to get the tax savings, but you can also use a small business. So any organization or trust doesn't have any income limits, so they can make the contribution no matter how much money that they're making. So it's a little bit of a loophole in order to get the money into the Coverdell ESA. So if you have a small business, you can also make that contribution. Tip number 2, and this is probably one of my favorite ones about all these tips about the Coverdell ESA, are the investment options. They're basically unlimited. You can invest in any stocks or bonds, ETFs, or mutual funds. Now this gets compared to the 529 plans, which are limited to the investments in that particular 529 plan. So depending on which plan you choose will depend on what availability that you have on those particular investments. Now, if that's overwhelming to you, that's okay too, because you can use a third-party money manager, have a model portfolio, use a target date fund. There are plenty of options inside of the Coverdell ESA that you can use to streamline your investments as well. So don't get too overwhelmed because they're unlimited, but just know that you have access to build a customized portfolio inside of the Coverdell ESA. Tip number 3, computers and the internet. So you can actually pay for the computer or the internet service for K through 12 with the Coverdell ESA. Now I point out K through 12. You can also do this for college planning, but this is what's different from the 529 plan. So the 529 plan can only be used for college for those expenses. For K through 12, the 529 plan is limited to just tuition. So this expands it with using the Coverdell ESA to use for computers or internet in K through 12. So here's how the rule reads. It says the purchase of a computer or peripheral equipment, computer software, fiber optic cables related to computer use or internet access, and related services is a qualified elementary or secondary education expense if it's to be used by the beneficiary and the beneficiary's family during any of the years the beneficiary is in elementary or secondary school. Now, I find that kind of interesting that they even bother to point out that the rest of the family members can actually still use the computer and qualify to use the money when it's coming from the Coverdell ESA. It's kind of ridiculous. Like, of course, somebody else is going to touch this computer at some point, but I guess they just wanted to stick it in there. Like, you're going to get audited and they're going to go through your browsing history or something. It's ridiculous. But anyways, it's a nice added benefit to use the Coverdell ESA. Tip number 4, you can use the Coverdell ESA for academic tutoring for K through 12. Now that's kind of nice that you could pay for academic tutoring with these dollars. So you're still getting that tax benefit from the growth and able to pay for the academic tutoring, which is not something that you could have done with the 529 plan. So this is an added benefit that I see with the Coverdell ESA. So if you want to do tutoring, or if you think that you're going to use it for academic tutoring, it's just another added benefit of why you should look at the Coverdell ESA. Tip number 5. So above and beyond what we just talked about number 4 for the academic tutoring, you can also use the Coverdell ESA to pay for books, supplies, and equipment for K through 12. Now again, the 529 plan only for tuition. So the 529 plan can only be used for tuition up to $10,000 on an annual basis for K through 12. So to pay for these extra costs, you can use the Coverdell ESA. Tip number 6, know the contribution deadline. Now the Coverdell ESA has a contribution deadline of April 15th. So it's your tax filing deadline. Now those contributions for April 15th can still be made for the previous tax year. So if it's April 15th of 2020, you can still make those contributions for 2019. Now the 529 plans are a little bit different. Some of them, or actually most of them, have a 12/31 deadline, but some of them do go to April 15th, and some of them even go further than that with the deadlines. So you need to look at your particular 529 plan if you have one to see what those deadlines are. But the Coverdell ESA is April 15th. So if you need to make a last minute contribution, you still can. They're the same rules as both the traditional and Roth IRA deadlines. And those are the 6 tips on the Coverdell ESA that you should know if you didn't know already. Now, if you want to learn more about the Coverdell ESA, I did a previous video on the Coverdell that I'll leave a link on the description at the bottom so you can learn a little bit more. And if you've enjoyed this video, be sure to subscribe and leave your comments down at the bottom.